This is him. You should be able to see him on the screen there. Adorable little boy. Loved his cowboy hat. Loved his cowboy boots. In fact, his parents told me that he would always wear boots that were 1 or 2 sizes bigger, and he just loved to clomp around the house in them. So who was on this camping trip? Well, let's start with the timeline. It was Friday, July 10th, 2015. DeOrr Kunz goes camping with his family at the Timber Creek campground. See that campground? It's beautiful. Anybody here ever been to Idaho? Anybody here from Idaho? Yeah. Yes. What part? Rigby, okay. So I probably know you. Idaho's a small town, small place. So this is the Timber Creek campground right here. These are the people who were on that camping trip. Mom, Jessica. Dad, also named DeOrr. Great-grandpa Robert Walton, and Issac Reinwand, a family friend of Grandpa. Now, from what the parents told me, this was a last-minute camping trip. It's summertime, why don't we get away? And Grandpa Bob wants to go up to the place where he used to camp as a child. The parents said they got in touch with Grandpa Bob, and he said, that's fine, can I bring my friend along, Issac? So the parents had never met Issac before. And they all set off on a camping trip in different vehicles. Now they get up there, and in a minute I'm going to play the 911 call that happened right after DeOrr vanished. They get up there, it was late, midnight, pitch black. In order to get to this camping site, when I went up there, I had to take an SUV with thick tires. A small vehicle would not make it up the rocky path. It's bumpy. The terrain is really, really hard to even walk down. But that's part of the draw to this camping site. A lot of people want to escape. They want to get out there. There's no cell phone service. There's not people around you. You're really alone now. So they got there late Thursday night, early Friday morning. A few hours go by, and the parents said, we're going to go down by the creek and look at some minnow fish. They thought DeOrr was with Grandpa, who was sitting by the fire. Grandpa is old, and Grandpa is on oxygen. He can't move around really quick. Issac, the friend, is fishing, and he's in another part of the campsite. So the parents thought, they thought that little DeOrr was with Grandpa. Grandpa thought DeOrr was with the parents. The parents come back about 20 minutes later. They say, where's DeOrr? And he's gone. They search the campsite for a few minutes, 10 to 15, 20 minutes. There's no sign of DeOrr. They then need to call 911, but there's no cell phone signal where they're at. So they've got to get in a vehicle and drive 10, 15 minutes to finally get a cell phone signal. Mom calls 911, and this is what she says. We've edited it down from about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Here's part of the call.
What's the address of your emergency?
I'm actually camping in Leadworth, just outside of Leadworth.
Uh-huh.
My 2-year-old son, we can't find him.
What's your name?
Jessica.
Jessica who?
Mitchell.
How long has he been missing?
About an hour.
An hour?
Yeah.
Are you by water?
Yes.
Okay, stay on the phone with me, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to put you on hold. Jessica?
Yeah.
What's your son's name?
DeOrr.
What is it?
DeOrr. ORR.
What's his first name?
That's his first name. DeOrr.
Oh. Okay. What is he wearing?
He was wearing cowboy boots, a blue pair, like pajama pants, and a camel jacket. And he's got shaggy blonde hair.
Is your husband calling too?
Like all down where we were camping at, and we can't find him at all.
Okay, we need you to stay within cell service. We've got people going on the way.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. And you keep us updated with anything that's going on, okay?
Okay.
All right. Don't go away from cell service.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, at the same time, DeOrr's dad, DeOrr, was on his phone with 911, so you may have heard him in the background. Now, again, this is a remote area, so they send up the search and rescue crew that day, and the search begins. There's horses that are brought in, ATVs. There's, you saw that reservoir there that I'm pointing at in that image. They brought in boats. They really tried to blanket the area with search crews. But by Friday night, he was gone. They couldn't find him. Still no sign of him. So Saturday morning comes around, July 11th, and they really started to focus on the creek and this reservoir. They were at a campsite that had a creek that ran through it, and the thought was that maybe somehow DeOrr got into this creek, and maybe somehow he ended up in the reservoir, which is problematic for any 2-year-old. So they actually, at one point, were crawling on their hands and knees through that creek, searching every bit of gravel that they could. So where on Friday he disappears, Saturday the search continues, Sunday the search continues, and by Monday, with no sign of DeOrr, I decide to go up to the campsite. And this is what, I want to give you a visual as far as what the campsite looks like so you can picture it in your mind where this little boy could have gone.
This is the place last seen right here, this location.
More than 4 days and still no sign of DeOrr Kunz. Wednesday, advanced search and rescue crews with canine dogs scoured the reservoir and creek near the campsite where DeOrr disappeared.
You've searched the creek several times. Any sign of him in the creek?
Sunday morning we started actually removing debris, and I had 6 guys, 2 in wetsuits, hip waders, on their hands and knees. Searched it yesterday, we're searching today.
The road to get up to the campground is really rocky. We're in an SUV and we're getting bounced all over the place. You can see that it is not paved. There's rocks everywhere, and you would really need to be in an all-terrain vehicle or an SUV to even get to where the family was camping. This is the campsite where DeOrr and his family were camping. It looks like your average campsite. You've got a fire pit, a picnic table, very close to the creek that we have heard so much about. In fact, the creek is just here, a few yards away. Notice the terrain down to the water. It's very steep. It would be difficult for a young child to make their way down that hill. It is possible, but again, it is a steep hill. Now, we're told that the parents and all of the family were here together when the parents decided to go off exploring. They went up this way, away from the campsite, while DeOrr stayed here with his grandfather. By the time the parents came back, about 10 or 15 minutes later, DeOrr was gone. There's been a lot of rumors on social media about the family, possible suspects, possible theories. What can you say?
Yeah, that's too bad. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there. And, you know, we interviewed the family. I'm good with them. They're good with me. All this innuendo out on social media really needs to stop. And let's, you know, try to add to their peace a little bit. Try to give them some space and let's help them out.
That's exactly what the family is asking for. DeOrr's father tells me he's staying near the campsite until his son is found, and they're asking for continued prayers as they hold out hope. In Lemhi County, Nate Eaton, EastIdahoNews.com. So the problem was people on social media were instantly saying the parents are responsible, blaming the parents, doing what trolls often do on social media, and the family was reading the comments. If you take anything away from CrimeCon, don't read the comments. And it was getting in their heads. In fact, somebody took our stories and they reversed the speech around, and they psychoanalyzed all sorts of stuff in there, and it really was, the family was starting to shut down and not want to talk to investigators. So that kind of gives you a layout of the campsite. Now, on Monday, so DeOrr's been missing since Friday. On Monday, I was able to get a hold of the parents. I called DeOrr's father, and he answered right away, and I said, I'm Nate Eaton. I'm a reporter with East Idaho News. would you be willing to do an interview with me about your missing son? And he said, sure. And I'll come with his mother, and we'll be there in 10 minutes. And I thought, wow, we were a brand new newsroom. I used to work in television, and then I moved back to Idaho to start a website, a news website. So we were like trying to find cameras to set up. I mean, this interview was coming together a lot quicker than I thought it was going to happen, but I was so glad they were willing to talk so that I could look at these parents in the eye and find out what happened to their kid. Now, as you watch the interview, I want you to keep in mind the time frame. These parents were not suspects. You heard the sheriff there say that they were cooperating with them for the most part, that he had no issue with them. These are grieving, missing parents whose kid is missing. I've been told over the years I should have grilled them and tried to, pin them down over the specific seconds. But that, at that moment, would not really have been appropriate for the interview because, again, they weren't suspects. But this videotape here that you're about to see has proven to be helpful with the investigators as they continue to look into this case because the parents did not do any other interviews for quite some time. This is what they said to me 4 days after their son disappeared.
We searched after about 20 minutes and in a dead panic, not knowing where he was in such a small area, and never being there, I knew I was in trouble. So we decided to call search and rescue, and that's when I drove down. She tried getting a signal out. As soon as I got a hold of them, they told me that she was on the other line with them, and they had our location, and they were on our way. He's pretty small for his age, but he moves pretty good, and that was our concern. He was right with us. Where it's at is, I thought it would be perfect to go camping there because it's enclosed by walls of mountains and there's not much space around there that he could go. And our biggest concern was the creek, which was knee deep, a few feet wide, but he's a little guy. We're trying to hold up the best we can, but we have hope is the thing. Hope is what keeps it going. Hope is because the search is not over, search is not done. We will find him. No matter what.
You were in the truck, so was it you that first realized, oh no, DeOrr's not here?
No, we both did.
No, we both did.
After 20 minutes of up and down the creek and up and around the camp and he wasn't there, that's when I got in my pickup truck and drove down the road to try and get some service.
Yeah, especially after screaming his name. We have nicknames for him. No sound of him,
This little
no
boy
crying.
he's a goer and a mover, but he does not go away from his parents.
So he was just kind of playing, and you guys were doing your thing, and then you noticed.
He was playing with.
He was
He
with
was
my
playing with
grandfather.
Grandpa. He was getting ready for a nap. And I say it was almost. By that time it was almost 2, and he usually takes his nap. We was just we decided we're going to go a little exploring. He was going to be good with Grandpa by the campfire. We weren't more than probably 50 yards away in 10 minutes. But the time I seen him to the point I figured out he was gone. And I come back up in the creek, and I've actually seen there were some things down by the little minnows and I thought he would just love. So when I come back up to get him, and I yelled over to Grandpa, where's little DeOrr? He immediately shocked. He says, he came up to you because it's such a small area. That's what a lot of people, they don't understand is they just assume, how could you let your kid out of your sight? This area is pretty well blocked in, and you can see, there's no way you couldn't not see him in what we thought. And in a split second, your whole world is upside down.
This is his blanket. He doesn't go anywhere without his blanket, his cup, or his monkey. And all 3 of them were left at the campground.
We're looking for you, son, and we will find you. And we love you more than anything in the world. You have a lot of people who love you and are looking for you. Buddy will find you.
We'll
Daddy
never
will find
stop
you.
looking until we get you a home.
So we do that interview. By the way, we've posted the entire interview on our YouTube channel. There's some cards here as you leave the room that you can take, and it'll direct you to all the videos that we've done on this story. We post the video, and the Daily Mail picks it up as their main story that day. And so the story spreads around the world. Where is DeOrr Kunz? There's a bunch of theories. There's kind of what we learned from the interview. His parents believe that he was abducted and believed that he was alive. They thought Robert, Grandpa Bob, was watching him. Grandpa Bob thought DeOrr was with his parents. That monkey there in that photo, the cup and the blanket were found at the campsite. So that's one theory. He was abducted. You saw how remote the campsite was. In order for anybody to get up there, you likely would have heard a vehicle or an ATV or some sort of machine, motor coming up there. Someone, I guess, could walk up the campsite, but it's not very fast to get out of there. You couldn't really ride a bike. You could, I guess, bring a horse. So there's the one theory. He was abducted. The other theory is maybe there was a wild animal. There are bears in the area. There are wolves in the area. There's even eagles that have been known to swoop down and grab big pieces of food. I don't know about a bird that's ever grabbed a child, but this theory was floating around. The thing was that there was never a boot found, and he was wearing the boots that were bigger. So you would think if you're in oversized shoes and something's going to grab you from your head, the boots would likely fall off. Or if a bear grabbed you, there would probably be bones or remnants or even a wolf. Not a trace. Nothing. The search continues Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, this map, I hope you can see it. If you can see where that green X is, down by the pink line, there was the campsite, and the reservoir is up by the blue X below there. So they were actually below the reservoir. It is possible that you could hike up to that reservoir. I've done it. It took me about 30 minutes, and it was uphill. You could also drive up there. They were really focused on the reservoir because on one of these early days, a cadaver dog hit on a scent. They brought in a dog to the reservoir, and the dog would not leave the reservoir alone. So they brought in divers from Idaho Falls and from other jurisdictions, and they dove and they dove and they dove. Well, once this hit the news, somebody came forward and said, "I'm sorry, I had no idea. I took a family member's cremains and put them in that reservoir." It just was happenstance that they did this around the same time that this boy disappeared. They dumped the cremains because it was their loved one's favorite place to go, and they were using all of these resources on the reservoir when really there was no sign of DeOrr in that water. And they searched that reservoir for days until they realized that there was nothing in there. Well, let's fast forward. So that was July 2015. There was all sorts of DeOrr sightings. I got a call one night that DeOrr was at Walmart with an old man, and the guy had diapers, boxes of diapers in the cart. The family got the same call. I ran down to Walmart. The family was there. The police were there. They showed me an image from the surveillance camera, and sure enough, it looked like DeOrr. Turns out it wasn't him. It was a grandpa with his grandson. They tracked the guy down. They went to his house. It wasn't him. We got an image sent to our newsroom one day of a little boy in California in a hotel lobby who just wandered in. It was filthy dirty. He looked just like DeOrr. They called the police. It actually was one of the guests' kids who got out of the room and went outside to play and made it through the front door. The police were getting bombarded with calls of people who were having, thoughts about where he could be, that he was sold into sex trafficking, which has happened before. And the police would look into these theories, but nothing. And then 6 or 7 months later, January 25th, I got a tip. I was at my dad's birthday party, and I got a tip saying, something's going to go down this weekend. And so I hopped on a bus so my family could stay at the party, and I took a bus to Idaho Falls, waiting, and sure enough, the next day, the sheriff announced that Jessica and Vernal were suspects in their child's disappearance, and that they have, quote, been less than truthful with investigators. They did not arrest them, though. They just said that they were suspects. And the 2 other people on the camping trip, Grandpa and Isaac, were persons of interest. That's a term that the police were pretty honest with us and said, well, really, everyone that would have been at that campsite would have been a person of interest because they were the last people there. But they elevated the parents' status to suspects, but never arrested them. Well, that day, the parents fought back. And they said, if we're suspects, show us the proof that we had something to do with our kid's disappearance. Show us. Why are we suspects? Their parents came out, the parents of Jessica and Vernal came out and said, where's the proof? And the sheriff's office never produced any. These were the two persons of interest, Robert and Grandpa Bob, who both spoke with police, both agreed to talk with them, and Issac agreed to eventually sit down with us. Now, I'm going to be honest, we went to Isaac's house, and when we pulled up, he had a huge, butcher knife stuck in the lawn. And we knocked on the door, and he popped his head out of his window, and he wasn't dressed, at all. So, he's a little interesting, but he agreed to talk to us. And this was right when the parents were named as suspects. He finally agreed to break his silence. The first question out of my mouth was, how have the past few months been for you? Now, I'm sure if I were to sit down with any of you, and you've been at the center of this investigation regarding a missing kid, and you finally agree to talk to me after 6 months, your answer would probably be, well, it's been really stressful, or I just want this kid found. But his response, and again, we posted this on our YouTube, I don't have time to show it today. His response was, well, it's been kind of boring, not a lot's been going on. Unusual, I'm not casting any stones at him, but the rest of the interview kind of went like that. So he's kind of slow, you could say. And Grandpa Bob cooperated with investigators, but again, Grandpa Bob's elderly, has some memory issues, hooked to oxygen, can't move really fast. So they're named persons of interest. DeOrr is the same age as my daughter, Emmy, who had her last soccer game this morning, and I got to watch it on FaceTime. I'm up covering this story every day for, there may have been 1 or 2 days over the past 6 years that I haven't thought about this case. I just don't know which days those are. And so I look at my daughter and I think, when I'm up at the campsite, she, at that age, was always by mom or dad's side. If we walked 10 feet, she wanted to be there, unless she was distracted by an iPhone or something. But how could a 2-year-old make it down the side little cliff area, not much of a cliff, but a ravine area where an adult, you or I, would need to maybe go down sideways or be careful? You'd probably tumble over and fall. Could a 2-year-old really make it from that creek to the reservoir? Where could a 2-year-old roam in this vast, vast area of millions of acres without being seen by an adult? So, they were named suspects, and then eventually the parents broke up. Jessica got remarried. Or Jessica got married. Her and Vernal were never married. I mentioned the DeOrr sightings, and then about a year and a half ago, Grandpa Bob passed away. So out of the 4 people at the campsite, 4 adults, there's 3 that are alive. The old sheriff left office. He didn't run again. And the chief deputy who you saw in that video piece earlier is now the sheriff. And he has told me that, on the record, that he would not have named the parents as suspects. That the old sheriff did that. Yes, they're persons of interest, but he would not have gone so far as to name them suspects. Now, here's where the story takes an interesting twist. There's been 3 PIs that have been involved with it. The first one was a retired U.S. Marshal who the family knew, who said, I will come and I will represent you for free. And the first thing I want to do is offer a cash reward for information that leads to your son. And according to him, the parents declined that. The parents declined an interview with Good Morning America, with Nancy Grace, with national news. In fact, as I said, the only interview they gave was to us. Again, this is where I think if I was missing my daughter, Emmy, I would be on every broadcast you could get me on. But maybe maybe that's because I work in the media. I don't know. But we all deal with things differently, and I'm not criticizing their opinion, but they kind of shut down. So Frank Vilt joins the case, and he starts to do media appearances. He comes and talks to me. He goes up to the campsite, and he does a reenactment with an actual 2-year-old child to see where the child would go. He had the parents up there. They restaged the whole thing as much as they could. But then he fires them. Or he doesn't fire them. I guess he can't fire them, but he drops them. This is the letter that he gave us that he sent to them. He says, I'm withdrawing from the investigation because of circumstances beyond my control. I'm perplexed as to why you did not want me to advertise the $20,000 reward. I was willing to put up personal funds in hopes that the public could provide information leading to the whereabouts of your son. When I agreed to assist you, I informed you that I would work out-of-pocket expenses. Basically, I was going to volunteer my time and my money. And then the last sentence of paragraph 2. In my professional opinion, both of you lied and misrepresented the true facts that could solve the mystery of your missing son. There are other aspects of this case. I cannot go into it this time, but simply put, I believe that the searches will all be non-productive. The searches are only used by you to cover a possible crime that one or the both of you may have committed. My suggestion is that you fully cooperate with the Lemhi County Sheriff and tell the truth. Pretty bold letter. Their response, they didn't have one. He ends it with, sooner or later, the truth will come out. Then another private investigator joins the case, Philip Klein, there on the left, based in Texas. He was actually, the family did a bunch of fundraisers so they could hire him and bring him on to the case. They did an auction on DeOrr's birthday, a birthday party spaghetti dinner that you could pay, and all the proceeds would go to hire Philip Klein. So Philip Klein agrees to join the case, and he tells them up front, you may not be happy with my results. I don't have a dog in this fight, but you may not be happy with my results because they might come back to hurt you, or you might be happy with them. Regardless, I want to let you know that I'm being independent. The family said that's fine. They all agreed to sit down with him. This was before Grandpa died. They all did videotaped interviews with him for hours. He came to Idaho several times. He liked to do media appearances. He probably said too much in those media appearances. But he really took this case and ran with it. He came out and said, at the conclusion, that he believes Jessica knows where her son is. He didn't elaborate on that, but he also had the same conclusion as that first investigator that the parents were not telling the truth. He did an interview with me, and he said simple things like, what did you eat for breakfast that morning? Didn't line up. Jessica would give one answer, Vernal would give another. Simple things about who slept in which vehicle or who slept in a tent. He said that it was all over the place, that there were 7 or 8 different versions of simple questions based on the interview at different times. He went public. The family sued, at least Vernal sued him. It got into a nasty legal dispute. That got settled and went away. But Philip Klein still to this day has said that he has videotapes of these interviews that he wants to release. And actually, in a few weeks, we're going to talk to him on Crime HQ. If you sign up for Crime HQ, it's going to be a live interview that you can type in questions to him if you want. We're also going to talk with the sheriff, who's been on this case from the beginning, and the grandmother of these two. So Philip Klein leaves the case. Then David Marshburn comes to Idaho, another PI from North Carolina, with his dogs. And they go up to the campsite, and his dogs hit on something. Now, dogs had been through this site before, so they had been over all of these areas, and that's what was kind of unusual, is that his dogs really hit on a specific area. They had to dig down. They had to pick up whatever the dogs hit on. They sent that to the FBI in Virginia, Quantico, and after about a year, it was returned that it was an animal bone. It was not human. So you've had these 3 PIs that have done it. David Marshburn has not issued a ruling on what he thinks happened, but the 2 PIs definitely have been clear in what they think happened as far as who knows something. 2017, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released this photo. Apparently, they'll do this after, there's probably experts here there are experts here who know far more than I on this, but after a few years when a child disappears, and then every 5 or 10 years, they'll do an updated one. But you look at that little boy as an age progression, and you think about it now in 2021, 4 years later. If DeOrr walked in this room today, I don't know if I'd recognize him. And that's sad to me. I look at a picture of my daughter when she was 2 and how she looks today, and yeah, there's the similarities, of course, but you grow and you change. DeOrr could be out there somewhere, and we might not even know that it's him. And he might not know who he is. We've heard those stories before. So they released this photo to get the word out again in 2017, 2 years after he disappeared, to show that this is probably what he could look like. That is the question. What happened to DeOrr? He's missing. To this day, the parents are not behind bars. They have not been arrested or charged with anything. They have, as we mentioned, Jessica got remarried. Vernal's gone back to work. He was a truck driver. Issac got married, living his life. Every July since then, the sheriff has taken up a team of searchers back up to the campsite to do any sort of investigative work that they can. But there haven't been any big breaks or any big leads or anything like that.